Welcome back. In this video, we are going to look at Scrum Framework, which is the most popular Agile project management framework used by most of the Agile teams, right? Scrum is a framework which was developed by Ken Scramber and Jeff Sutherland, who are the co-creators of Scrum Framework. You can read more about the Scrum Framework in Scrum Guide, which actually follows all the Agile values and principles. And to start any company's Agile journey, it begins with implementing Scrum or Kanban or any other kind of project management frameworks, right? How the Scrum framework works is, framework has 3 roles, 5 ceremonies, and 3 artifacts, right? So let's look at first understanding what are the 3 roles of Scrum. The 3 roles of Scrum are, the first role is product owner, right? Product owner is basically the customer face for the development team. So it's basically, you can think of, he is the person who actually is responsible for creating and managing the product backlog. The next role we have is development team. Development team are the ones who are going to build the actual product, right? So the how part of building the product is entirely decided by the development team, whereas the what part of a product development is decided by the product owner. Similarly, you are having someone called a Scrum Master, who is basically master of Scrum, which means that he understands the Scrum framework. He understands what Agile means, right? What Agile ways of working means, and at the same time, he helps the team to maximize the utilization of Scrum in the for the software development team, right? So these are the 3 roles that we have in Scrum, right? So let's start with how this entire framework works, right? So the product owner, in consultation with the stakeholders, with the users, with the customers, build something called as a product backlog. The product backlog is always an ordered list of things to do in a product, right? And anybody can contribute towards building of the product backlog, but what needs to be there, what needs to be done by the development team is always decided by the product owner. In Scrum, each and every iteration we call it as a sprint. So every sprint in Scrum starts with something called as sprint planning, where the team is going to plan for what is that they want to achieve in the upcoming iteration, right? So it's basically time boxed for a maximum of 8 hours for a 30-day sprint. If the sprint length is of 2 weeks, then basically sprint planning should be time boxed to 4 hours, right? Scrum Master is the one who facilitates the sprint planning meeting, where the team actually from the product backlog, they are going to pick up what are the top priority items in the backlog, pull it into the sprint planning, and in terms of how they will achieve the sprint goal, they will break down the requirements into tasks, right? So there are basically 2 parts in the sprint planning. First is the product owner explains what stories he is expecting the team to build in the upcoming sprint. The team pulls one story at a time, talk about that particular story, get all the clarifications from the product owner, break that user story into technical tasks that will be required to implement a given particular story. That's how the sprint planning happens for 4 hours. Once the team feels that they have enough on their plate, which can be done only for a given particular iteration, that's when the sprint planning ends, and the team also arrives at what should be the sprint goal, right? So the team, along with the product owner, they decide that what is that goal that they are chasing for in the given sprint. Once the sprint goal is formulated, the teams goes back and start working on each and every requirement that was identified as part of sprint planning. So they'll take again the top priority requirement, start implementing it. They will build, test, code, right? All the unit tests will be within a given sprint boundary, right? If it's a 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, all the stories will be implemented as per the definition of done, right? Definition of done is basically a criteria that is used by the development team to help them understand whether a particular piece of requirement is ready to be deployed into the production or not, right? On daily basis, the team gets together, meets in a ceremony called as daily scrum, right? It's maximum time box to 15 minutes, where all the development team members self-organize themselves around the list of tasks that needs to be done in order to accomplish the sprint goal, and based on that they are going to talk about how each and every individual is contributing towards achieving the sprint goal, and at the same time they will also track their progress in terms of how are they progressing towards achieving their sprint goals, right? So, two main objectives for daily scrum. One is every individual will plan their own contribution towards the iteration goal, and at the same time they see how are they progressing towards achieving the sprint goals. At the end of the sprint, right, once the time box expires, the team will be ready with demonstrating their work to the stakeholders in a ceremony called a sprint review, right? Sprint review is a ceremony where all the work that is done in a given iteration, right, whether it's done or not done, the product owner is going to talk about what all things have been done, not done, and whatever has been done, the delivery team, that is the development team, demonstrates the working software to the stakeholders to seek their feedback. And all the feedback that comes as part of sprint review goes into a product backlog, right? And at the same time, during sprint review itself, the product owner also discusses at the high level with the stakeholders at the development team and do the reprioritization of your product backlog items, right? Then the entire team actually meets together for one more ceremony called a sprint retrospective, where they look back at the entire iteration's work and talk in terms of what can be done as an improvement in order to improve their processes, in order to improve the way they are developing the product in terms of the people, collaboration, communication aspects, right? So, considering people, product and process, right, all three aspects the teams discusses together and identify some of the action items which the team wants to work upon, so that would lead to a continuous improvement process, right? So, this is the crux of the Scrum framework. Apart from these four ceremonies, we are having something called as product backlog refinement ceremony. In this, basically the teams will start preparing for the future work. For example, say currently the team is in sprint 1, the team is going to get together in between of the say 5th day or 6th day of the sprint for 2 hours and talk about the future requirements that the team is going to work upon. That way they are getting prepared themselves for the future set of features that the team is going to work upon, and it's also a way of getting them ready for the future work. For example, say while discussing the product backlog refinement, the team identifies that there should be some architectural work that needs to be done. The preparation work to build that particular feature will be accommodated in the ongoing sprints. So, that is how people will be, the team will be ready for future work as well, right. So, the 5 events that we have is sprint planning, the daily scrum, the sprint review, sprint retrospection and then product backlog refinement. And finally, coming to the artifacts of Scrum, we are having 3 artifacts. The first artifact we call it as a product backlog, which is nothing but the to-do list of what all things will be developed in a given product. Similarly, you are having sprint backlog, which is basically the plan in terms of how the team is going to achieve the sprint goal. Similarly, you are having the product itself as one of the artifact, which is nothing but a working software which you produce at the end of each and every sprint. So, the goal for each and every sprint should be to produce a potentially deployable software increment, right. So, it should be ready to be deployed in production at any given point of time. Whenever the product management team will ask the development team, we should be able to make that release happen. Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of this particular module as well as this particular course. Hope you like the video. For more details, you have to refer to Scrum Guide to get more understanding on the Scrum framework. Thank you.